about anything else. As long as you're obedient, God will take care of the rest.
Yes.
Now, most people in today's church, and by church, I don't mean just this church, I mean church in general. Most people in today's church expect people to wait on them hand and foot. They do. They sit there and they wait for someone else to do it. That shouldn't be the attitude of the Christian. You know what? Jesus, as we just read, came to serve. So if Jesus came to serve, does that make you better than Jesus then? If you just sit there and wait for people to serve you? Jesus, his whole life, read it, the 3.5 years of his time on earth, he served people. He didn't wait for people to serve him. He didn't wait for people to come. He went looking for them. You know, when this fire fell on the day of Pentecost, notice he couldn't be contained to a building. The doors burst open, they shot out. People are like, what on earth's going on there? And then all of a sudden they're all hearing the gospel. See, being a Christian is more than living in this building. And when the Holy Spirit is fired up in you, it makes you burst out that door. You want to help people because you have the answer. I spoke to a guy, do you know, I was going to go home on Tuesday morning because I wasn't feeling too well. I needed a bath and I was starting to feel sorry for myself. And a guy came in who's been heavily on drugs. And you know, I spent an hour talking to him. I didn't need to speak to him for an hour. But you know what? That bloke got everything about God. And you know what? When I finished, I forgot about how much I was earning. In the whole time I had spoken to him. And you know what? That's what we need to do. We need to say, I don't need my God. I don't need that. No, somebody needs the gospel. Somebody needs help. Somebody needs love. You know what? None of us would be here today if someone hadn't given up some time to show us love. We wouldn't. Ellen reckons J. John's got all the funny stories, Andrew's got the props. So I've got a prop for you. I'm the prop man. Where? I'm going to play with the pasta. Please turn with me to John 13. I'm going to try and do this next part without shouting. John chapter 13. You know, there's nothing better than a song of rustling leaves. John chapter 13, start at verse 1. Before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave this world and return to his Father. He now showed the disciples the full extent of his love. It was time for supper, and the devil had already enticed Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to carry out the plan to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God and would return to God. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel he had around him. When he came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, Lord, why are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you don't understand now why I'm doing it. Someday you will. No, Peter protested, you will never wash my feet. Jesus replied, if I don't wash your feet, you won't belong to me. Simon Peter exclaimed then, wash my hands and my head as well, Lord, not just my feet. Jesus replied, a person who has bathed all over does not need to wash, except for the feet, to be entirely clean. And you are clean, but that isn't true of everyone here. For Jesus knew who would betray him. That is what he meant when he said, not all of you are clean. After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked them, do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right because it is true. And since I, the Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. How true it is that a servant is not greater than the master, nor a messenger more important than the one who sends them. You know these things, now do them. That is the path of blessing. Now I'm not going to get into ritual feet washing. Right? The whole idea of having the bowl there and the water there, it is symbolic. I want to know, is there anybody who's prepared to wash anybody else's feet in this place? And also, is there anybody in this place who's willing to have their feet washed? Notice Peter's pride. No way you washing my feet, Lord. No chance. No chance. I need to know, would you do it? I don't actually want you to come up and do it. Right? So I don't think I can handle the smell. But what I want you to do, I want you to start thinking, is there anyone in this church whose feet I wouldn't be willing to wash? Ask the Lord to show you, is there anybody in this church whose feet, now go, get over yourselves, it's not about how smelly it is, it's about your attitude to each other. Is there any, because see, if you're willing to wash everybody's feet, then there's something there. There's something God can work with. If you're not willing to wash everybody's feet, then God's got some serious work to do in your lives. Jesus knelt before his disciples in total humility. This is the creator of the universe, who spoke it into being, is now on his knees in front of his disciples. Remember also that Judas was still there. Judas had his feet washed. Jesus assumed the position of a servant to those he loved. Now, when we read it, he says when he took off his outer clothing. Now, apparently, all that would have been left on is his loincloth. He would have basically been naked apart from this. And you know what? God really spoke to me about that, because he washed their feet with no preconceived ideas. He was showing them everything. I'm not doing this for some glory. I'm doing this because I love you. Yeah. Look, I'm not hiding anything. This is why I'm doing it. And everything we do, we need to ask God, what is the reason I'm doing this for? Is it for my glory or for your glory? Is it for my kingdom building or is it for your kingdom building? In Luke 22, right? We're not going to turn it now, but in Luke 22, what we see is the disciples come in and they're arguing. They're actually arguing over who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. The disciples, they think they're the top man. I'm going to be the greatest. No, you're not. I'm going to be the greatest. And you know, even gave the mothers involved. Man, ask Jesus who's going to be sitting on the right hand of me. See, they're arguing about, we've got to stop this arguing about who's the best. The church has to get over themselves. But what I want you to realize is, right, Jesus didn't actually say anything. He actually showed them. And in his actions of getting down before them, as a servant, he shut all the arguments down in a shot. And that's why I love Jesus. He didn't even have to open his mouth. In his humility, the arguments stopped. Now, let me just explain about foot washing. Because you might think this bloke's a bit of a fetish freak. But I'm not. In the old days, right, they have a feast. And they'd have a bath before they have the feast, right? Because obviously you want to smell good. But walk into the feast, obviously your feet get dirty. So what would happen is, in the house you were going to, they would have a slave. Now, he would be the lowest of the low. And he would very, very rarely be a Jew, because this was even below Jews, to wash the feet of anybody who come in the house. Now think of what Jesus just did. He's assumed the position of the lowest of the low. Now you can actually understand why people get a little bit like, no, you're not on my feet. Because you're my teacher. You are my teacher. And I cannot allow you to do my feet. So they meal with dirty feet. Because no one would take Because obviously there wasn't a slave there to clean their feet as they came in. Or otherwise Jesus wouldn't need to do it. So I'm asking them, why didn't any of the disciples do it? Why did they take the initiative? We're all sat dirty now, with dirty feet. Someone needs to wash the feet. I tell you why. Because they were arguing over who was going to be the greatest. And if they said to Jesus, you know what, Lord, we'll wash your feet, it would also mean they'd have to wash everybody else's. And they were not prepared to put themselves in that position of the lowest of the low. See, we as church people, we kind of like, we want the titles. But you know what? I admire the people who do things without the titles. Titles are man-made. They're man-made. They're not God-given. So, they would have to admit, have admitted their inferiority among the fellow competitors at the top position. And that's why no feet got washed. Now, this was an act of extreme servanthood. According to Jewish law and tradition, regarding the relationship between a teacher and his disciples, a teacher had no right to demand or expect that the disciples would wash his feet. So how much more unthinkable was it that the master actually did his disciples' feet? See, what Jesus is doing, he's challenging their thinking on every aspect along this journey, and this is just sitting down for a meal. See, we can pick this Bible up, we read it, well, that's my story. But you're going to look into it, there's a lot more in text. Jesus is challenging his people. He's challenging us, each and every one of us. Because see, what we're really like, Jesus washed the feet of his own. Jesus didn't do it in the community. He washed his disciples, his church. And he said to them, I'm leaving you an example. You. And the example is, you've got to lay down your life in humility for each other. But I can't do it alone because I don't like that. I don't like that. You know, there's that saying, you can choose your friends, you can't choose your family. You know what? God chose your family. Your spiritual family. God chose them. You didn't have nothing to do with it. God put you here. We need to love each other, church. That's what happened on the day of Pentecost. They were loving each other. They were in one accord. See the other thing as well. Think about it now. Jesus knows the beginning from the end. When Jesus came to this earth, he knew what his final goal was. He knew where he was heading. And when he washed his disciples' feet, he knew what was about to happen. This was the Last Supper. So Jesus now, knowing what he's about to endure, knowing that this is going to be the greatest miscarriage of justice, it's going to be the most pain, it's going to be the most pain and suffering ever experienced by a human being. What do we see? He puts his disciples before himself. Jesus had every right to say, you know what, boys, you crack on, I'm going to go and feel sorry for myself. I'm about to lay down my life by that. I'm about to suffer. But he doesn't. He puts his life to one side because he loves his disciples so much. This is the lesson we need to learn. You've got to lay down your life. If you want this church to grow, if you want this community to be impacted, it isn't going to be happening if you feel sorry for yourselves. You have to take the initiative. Lord, I had to do it on Tuesday. I need a bath or I need to speak to someone about Jesus. It's an hard decision. Which way am I going to go? It's ridiculous to sound, but I needed my bath. I needed a soak. But this guy needed Jesus more. But see, it's got to happen in the church. You know, Joy's being stuck up, right? Tucked up. She's had people do the dirty on her. She had people to come in and work on her house, and they didn't do it, and they'd taken her money, right? Do you know what we should be doing? We should be getting together, not to give money, but to give time to go and help God to do it up.